This is the heartbeat of human services, a peek into the inspiring stories of our community and all things DHS. Join us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Heartbeat of Human Services podcast. I'm your host, Paula Hernandez, and today we have two very special guests, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
My name is Gennessa. I'm a peer support specialist at the Kern County Superintendent of Schools.
And my name is Brian Johnson. I'm also a peer support specialist for Kern County Superintendent of Schools office.
Yes, so before we jump into your roles, I want to say that this has been a long time coming for us. I mean, not a long time, but we've been emailing back and forth about your guys' podcast, which we're here to talk about. You guys are in the foster care business, and of course we are as Department of Human Services. So can you guys tell us about your podcast? I don't know who wants to start first.
Yeah, we can tell you about our podcast. So our podcast is called Youth Voice Amplified, and it's a youth-led podcast, which me and Gennessa are former foster youth, and we interview other foster youth about their experiences in care.
Not only do we interview foster youth, we also interview all youth that face different diversity. So we've done homeless youth, we've done juvenile justice youth, we've done chronically ill youth. So it's a variety. It's definitely a variety.
Yeah. And so when you say juvenile, I don't know if everyone knows, but they come from probation?
From
Is that
probation,
what you mean?
yes. So who have had run-ins with the law, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I know on our podcast we've had former foster youth, but we've never had foster youth like you guys. And so I hope today people, will check you guys out after this podcast. But we're so happy to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So our first thing that we want to jump into is kind of your guys' life story. And so I've heard on your first podcast, you guys kind of introed your guys' selves, but I want to hear it from you guys here. And if we could start with you, Gennessa, and just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a peer support specialist.
I think it just depends on where you start.
Where do you want to start?
It's a very long story, so I kind of like to squish it together in the main points and a lot of the stuff that really highlighted my life. So I was in foster care for the first 13 years of my life. I am a former foster youth. I'm also GAP youth. And
what's GAP youth?
So GAP youth is youth that are foster youth, but they jump in and out of the system. So you have AB12 youth who have been in there consistently up until their 13th birthday or after. And then you have GAP youth who have jumped in and out. So there's two different types of foster youth. So AB12 youth tend to usually get all the stipends and ILP and AB12 benefits, where GAP youth get a little less than that, but that's what we get. So I was in foster care for the first 13 years of my life. I got out around like 12 and a half. And I was reunified with my parents, my biological parents. And we were originally taken from them because they were drug addicts. Hardcore drug addicts. And those 13 years in the system were not the kindest. I am the fourth oldest of 12 siblings. So I'm 6 boys, 6 girls, weirdly enough. So we were very split up during that time. And it was very hard for us to navigate it without each other because we always had each other. That was like our main thing. We used to call ourselves the Fisher Five. And it was like us 5 against everything else. Like everything in this world we always had each other. So that was our main highlight. So we faced a lot of abuse in the system and a lot of maltreatment. And coming out of that, I feel like from all that hard stuff that we had to go through, for me personally, it sparked a love for humans and for people and working with people and giving back to people. I saw how people treated me and my siblings, and so I wanted to do so much better than them. I wanted to do even more better than them. Even though you were very harsh and mean to me, I'm still going to give you all the services and the love you need to get what you need to do. So that's what sparked my love to be a peer support and to help others in my situation or have been in or is going through. And I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but it's okay.
No, it's fine. I mean, not a lot of people take it that way, if you've been through hardships like that. And you're not well spoken in the fact, you could tell your story. And I think that that's very powerful in that you've been able to go through your journey and be like, I'm going to be on the better end of this and, put positive out there, even though you might not have seen that. And so I commend you. That's amazing.
It just goes back to how people treat each other. It's like if my sibling or my sister or somebody I loved so much was out on the streets and was struggling, I would want somebody to treat them the way I treat people. like with the loving and kindness and like whatever you need, I'm going to try to connect you to what I can. So after I turned like 12, I was reunified with my parents who were still in active addiction. And from 12 to 13, 14, up until 15, I lived primarily with my mom, who was still active addiction. She's battling with mental illness, and it was extremely hard for her to be a mom. And so we took over that role. Me and my older sister, we were the moms. We did all the cooking, the cleaning. We took the kids to school. We missed most of our high school experience to make sure that the kids had stuff for themselves. So,
And did that impact kind of your school life a lot?
most definitely.
Yeah.
With the mental illness and the drug addiction, it just made my mom very angry and aggressive and abusive. So she would wake up and just pick one of us and just beat on us. And it was just like, it wasn't the environment for me to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
So in my sophomore year of high school, I ran into some trouble with the law, and I was arrested. And my first court date, a judge asked me if this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I said no. And so he gave me an option. He said, you can do 8 years or you can go to a 6-month military school. And so I went to a quasi-military school. 6 months, 8
So
years.
it's funny, not funny, like haha funny,
I
but
get
no,
you.
my family, we also, not me, my uncle adopted 4, and one of them also went to military school. So I mean, it's just funny. He told us stories and all this stuff, and so I mean, go ahead. That's just me
very
interjecting.
Common. I promise you, it's very common. Like, you didn't realize people who went to military school until they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from military school. It was a real train that put my life on tracks. It gave me a little bit more time to think about what I wanted to do, who I was as a person. I wasn't anybody's mom or somebody's caregiver. So I came back, and at that time I was 17, going into 18. So I went to BC. I signed up for classes. I was excited to start. And at that time I was living with my dad. And the day I turned 18, maybe a couple days after, he kicked me out. He just said, get a backpack, put your stuff in it, and get out of my house. And so that began my homeless journey. And at first, probably for the first 2 weeks, I was couch surfing with a friend, and her parents were undocumented. So they felt like I was a liability at their house, which was totally understandable. They have their own family to worry about. I understand that. No ill will towards them. And so they put me back out. And so I started living in Bakersfield on the streets. And I did that probably for a year and some change. And I had to pick between my education or my survival. And so I had to drop out of school. I dropped out of BC probably a semester and a half in. And I primarily lived on the streets. I used my BC card to still get food from the pantry. And I slept in park bathrooms. I slept sometimes at BC when there was like not a lot of security guards. It just kind of depended. Wherever there was somewhere quiet and safe I could sleep, I would sleep there. And after about like a year and some change of that, I met up with a therapist that I had like when I was really, really young. And he was like, well, why don't you go to the Dream Center? And he kept pushing me to go to the Dream Center. I didn't want to.
You're like, no,
I was
I'm
like,
good.
I was like, they're not going to give me anything. I'm not anything special. Like, they're not going to help me. And so he was like, what if I go to the Dream Center with you? And I don't know why that worked, but it did. And so we went to the Dream Center together, and he walked me through the whole process and did everything with me. And they matched me to a housing program. And so since then I have been housed, and I have continued to flourish in the sense of like after I was housed, I got a job at KCSOS the first time, and I worked at the Dream Center for a little bit, and then I moved on and I came back. So this is now as a peer support, and they opened a lot of doors for me, and they saw a lot of potential that I didn't see in myself. Mainly Allison Baptiste. She's a prevention specialist at KCSOS. She works on our team, but she was probably the main reason why I do what I do now, other than the fact that I just love it. She saw something bigger in me than I saw in myself. She really empowered me to be someone better, and she just saw something that I couldn't bring out in myself.
And I think that's a misconception people have is like foster youth, or just in general, homeless people want to be homeless, like, you know, and a lot of it in Kern County is homeless people usually were in the foster care system at one point in their life, right? So, and I think it's so important for people to have mentors, foster youth specifically. And so I'm glad you had yours, and you still have one, which is Allison, it seems like, right? I mean, I will let you continue. I keep interjecting.
You're good.
Yeah,
I love this because it's more of a dialogue, I feel. But I don't know. Allison just really, she just sparked my love for youth voice and that using our voice and youth voice and foster youth voice and homeless youth, that we can do something bigger than ourselves and help the next generation behind us before they even get homeless, before they even get to that spot where they're going to need someone to help them find housing. Is using their voice to create change. And so she really just sparked a love for that in me, and I'm so grateful to this day that I still have her because she just means so much to me.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. I wish she was here.
We're all like, Allison's coming?
Yeah, no, our Allison. So if for the audience, we have our own Allison here in our office, and so they have their own. It's confusing, but anyways,
office Allisons.
Yeah.
I'm your co-host Allison, and I'm interrupting today's podcast to highlight positions available at Kern DHS. We highly recommend applying if you're looking for a position that can help launch your county career. The following positions are available: group counselor, programmer, human services aide, social service worker, human services technician. Apply online today at kerncounty.com under the Careers tab. Thank you for listening, and now back to the podcast.
But we will go to the creation of the podcast. And so whose idea was it?
It was kind of an opportunity that was presented to us when we started our position, and if we were open to it. So pretty much we got the offer if we would love to be host of a podcast due to a grant, like doing these student voice projects through the Office of Education. So yeah, we kind of just, I don't know, I
feel like it was more of like an opportunity where it's like maybe, and we kind of took it and ran with it. Like,
yeah, because you don't see a lot of government agencies or nonprofit, in our line of work who do this. So it's very interesting that you guys also were like, we're gonna make this happen, and so you guys were chosen.
It was kind of really like a blank thing for us to kind of work on and mold, and it took a lot more work than I thought it was. You hear about people making podcasts and then
for fun.
I know, and then it's like you get into that, and it's like, this is a lot more work. Like the research, what you want to do, what type of podcast you want to be. It was a lot more work than I thought it would be.
Finding your audience.
And it took us months to work on. Like, we were working on it in the summer of 22, and we barely dropped it in February of this year. So it took a lot of work.
It
was
so you're building up like your community and
and like, what do we want to do? What do we want to talk about? What is our audience? Like our logo? What are we trying to present to our community? So it was like a lot more work than people make it seem. Like, just grab a mic and talk.
Yeah, and I love your guys' logo. So
yeah, it was really built from the ground up. So definitely proud of it.
It was definitely an opportunity that kind of fell into our laps, but we were able to build on it.
You guys are doing great, and I've listened to half of them, and I'm going to continue to listen. So with that, I'm going to go over to you, Brian, and, tell us a little bit about your story. Gennessa shared so much, so I don't want to put you on the hot spot. No. I liked your story, but Brian, go ahead and tell us how you ended up becoming a peer support specialist.
So my story deals with me being in care as well. I come from 5 other brothers, siblings set of 6, all boys, and a single mother. So me growing up, I'm the middle kid. I grew up kind of real quiet. And I didn't grow up in a place that was too, fancy. I grew up kind of poor a little bit, seeing a lot of things like domestic violence, which is one of the primary reasons why I got placed in the foster care at 6 years old. So that was kind of one of the groundbreaking points of my life, because being split from a sibling set of 6 and being paired in 2s really kind of did something for me. I'm not too sure. It just kind of molded me to who I am today.
How long were you in the foster care system for?
For actually a year. I thought it would be longer, but it was actually a year. I'm actually glad I went home, but my time in the care wasn't too bad. I just felt like alone, isolated. I wasn't too sure what was going on. I was like a little boy at the time. And, I went from going to an elementary school that was a public school to a private school. It was a different change of culture for me. And there wasn't too many people of color. If I can honestly remember, it's just like me and my brother. And
I know, so you said culturally. And so for me, I wasn't in the foster care system, but as a Latina, like I grew up trying to find like my self identity and like who was I, you know, growing up speaking English, but like my family speaks Spanish. And so for you, on top of that, add foster care system, how do you think that affected you? Did it make it harder?
I feel like it made it harder because I don't know. I feel like kind of like not necessarily a target. Just everyone knew my situation, just me being in care. Because like you know, even at that time when I was in the private school when I got transferred from public to private, you know, my caretaker was my teacher. Like little things like that. It was totally different for me, and I feel like at that time, you know, I reacted a lot out of anger and frustration because I didn't know what was going on. But you know, my parents at the time were great. They were amazing. I'm just glad they actually, you know, took proper care of me because not everyone has that experience and care.
And so, I mean, you were only there for a year and it's impacted you so much to get to the point where this is now your job. So it's obviously like it had made a huge impact on you. But would you say that for the better? I mean, it's not ever good, the situation, but look at your peer support specialist and you're in a position to help people now.
So like with that experience, I think it kind of molded me to be who I am due to the fact that, you know, I understand what it's like being in care. And it's kind of why I do what I do now because I actually have a foster resource home myself with my fiance, which I give all the props to because she was the one that kind of molded me into that. At the time, I thought I was too young. You know, we did this about like 3 years ago. We're still doing it today. And I was like, we're too young. Like, what kids look like us, listening to us, like younger guys and, well, younger man and younger woman. And, you know, she's like, we've been through it. We kind of know more than most. Like, you know, she put that perspective in my eyes. And I'm actually glad we did it. Like, you know, we've had over 40 kids in our care.
Wow.
In the past 3 years.
And you said she was in foster care?
She was as well, yeah.
Wow.
Her experience wasn't as, you know, easy as mine, but yeah.
You guys ended up meeting up and sharing stories and relating over that. That's another love story, though. We won't go over that today.
So, yeah. And so I've had anywhere from about newborns to 13-year-olds. Well, actually, yeah, 13 in my home, about 4, I would say closer to 50 now. But I think I want to give them the experience that I wouldn't say I never got because I got some of it, but the experience that a lot of kids don't get within care, you know. Because a lot of them go through traumatic experiences. And sometimes I think, you know, it's not about what happened to you, like, you know, like it's like what happened, like, you know, like some of them react in ways that people don't understand. They just think they're just being bad or they don't know how to, I don't know, kind of just express their frustration. But since I've been through it as well, I can kind of give a different standpoint.
Yeah. And I know in previous interviews we've had foster parents always end up saying, you know, these kids are trying to push you away. And so what kind of advice would you give for foster parents, young ones, especially like you, who want to foster, but maybe are like, I don't know, I'm too young or it's too hard? What would you say?
I would say you have to kind of earn a kid's respect. I say that because like sometimes when you bring kids in your home, some people feel entitled to be like, you have to respect me. I just brought you in my home. I'm trying to help you. But it's kind of the other way around is what I learned. Like, you know, they don't know you. So why do they have to respect you? You have to kind of earn that. And me doing that, I've built a lot of relationships with these kids, and they actually, you know, just end up being a normal kid, you would say, like, just because their situation doesn't define them, but they're just, in general, just a kid, and you have to understand that.
So do you keep up with these kids after they go out of your care?
I try to.
Do you try to?
I try to, but sometimes, you know, families, they want to move on from that chapter. Like, you know, they're in our care now. And I understand that because, you know, just as long as you had someone down the way that tried to help you, you can remember you had a great time. And I really try to help you, you know. That's all I can kind of get from that. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your guys' story. I don't know if it's, you know, it gets easier with every time you talk about it. And now letting the whole world know your story, but it'll definitely make a positive impact in our community. Why listen to youth voices?
Well, I would say you should listen to youth voice because who knows what's better for youth than youth? No one knows what's better for them than them. Like, you can do all you want, say like, oh, you know, we know what's best, we're older and these kind of things, but How do you know, like, if a kid says for educational purposes he needs tutoring and he doesn't understand the quality of the material, you should probably listen to that instead of just like saying he doesn't want to listen or he doesn't want to understand it. Just actually take the advice and listen to what they're trying to say.
As our producer Kim would say, it is the golden age of youth voice. And so I think that itself is a highlight. And it's kind of like a consumer thing. Like, if you want people to buy the product, are you going to make it yourself, or are you going to use the feedback of the people buying the product? So youth are those people buying the product, and their education, in life, in general. When we put the stigma on youth, we are dampening their voices. And so we need to kind of lift that stigma and really let them know that they are heard, because a lot of youth don't feel heard, whether it's foster or homeless, anybody in general. You're young. A lot of adults kind of oppress youth sometimes in the sense of like, well, I'm older, I know what's best. And it's like, I could also know what's best. So I think that's really why we like to highlight youth voice. And it's a better experience all around, because you never know what they're going to come up with. Some of them have some really creative ideas that you wouldn't have even thought of had they not said anything.
Yeah. And I know nowadays, I feel like that's so big, these high school walkouts and everything like that. Like, you see a lot of civil rights movements, and Greta Thunberg, if you guys know who that is like environmentalist girl who, you know, people are like, oh, she's no, but she's trying to make her impact as an environmentalist. So you guys are kind of doing the same thing in that sense. I thought you were going to add to that. But with that said, did you guys have anything else for us today or want to talk about?
I think this is just a touch on the youth voice thing. I think it makes it easier too, all around, if they just tell us what they need / want. And they're going to end up doing whatever they want anyway. So why don't we make it easier on ourselves and just listen and try to accommodate them the best way we can. So, yeah.
Well, thank you guys. And with that, I will end the podcast. And for those of you guys who want to know more, we will go ahead and link this on our social media, and we will try to get it out there to you guys to put out on Youth Voices, hopefully. Do you guys have a social media?
We do. We have Instagram and Facebook.
Do you guys have that handle?
Youth Voice Amplified Podcast.
Perfect.
For both.
Yes.
All right.
And we also have a Gmail if you guys want to email us about anything. It's youthvoiceamplified@gmail.com.
Perfect. And then we'll also link that in our description. So thank you guys for being here with us. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you. I'm your co-host, Paola Hernandez, and welcome to today's Mindful Minute. We will be talking about sand therapy. The CPS side of our department knows this technique fairly well. They use it as a creative counseling technique to help children who have experienced trauma to express their emotions. But today I wanted to focus on its soothing benefits. Research shows that sand therapy reduces symptoms of many mental health issues such as anxiety. That's because sand play therapy is unconstructed and forces you to be in the present and enjoy digging your hands into the different textures of sand. But if you are at a desk like me, maybe purchasing one of those small sand boxes are more of your speed. So check it out. This has been your Mindful Minute.
Thank you for joining us for the Heartbeat of Human Services podcast today. We hope you'll join us next time.